In just 47 seconds, $2.1 billion in climate funds would either stay frozen or flow to environmental projects across America. Kash Patel walked into the congressional hearing room like an investigator who had seen too many lies, clutching a stack of FBI case files that he believed would vindicate his DOJ allies. He didn't expect to face a senator who had prepared for months to dismantle everything he stood for. Cameras rolled as reporters held their breath. The chamber filled with an electric tension that made even seasoned politicians uncomfortable. What Patel was about to defend would either restore faith in his FBI leadership or destroy his credibility forever. The Hart Senate office building buzzed with unusual activity that morning. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse had requested this emergency oversight hearing on DOJ weaponization and climate fund irregularities just 72 hours earlier. Word had leaked that explosive evidence would be presented, evidence that could fundamentally alter how Americans viewed their justice system. In his private office, Whitehouse spread dozens of documents across his mahogany desk: internal DOJ emails, court filings, congressional testimony transcripts, FBI investigation notes. Each piece formed part of a puzzle that painted a disturbing picture of institutional corruption. Meanwhile, 3 floors below in the FBI's Washington field office, Kash Patel received the call that would define his directorship. Director Patel. His deputy's voice was strained. Senator Whitehouse is going nuclear on the Bove and Martin operation. He's claiming 7 major violations. We need you on the Hill immediately. Patel's jaw tightened as he processed the implications. Emil Bove, his acting deputy attorney general, and Ed Martin, the interim U.S. attorney for D.C., had executed a textbook investigation into climate fund irregularities. They had followed every protocol, pursued every lead, protected taxpayer money from potential fraud, or so Patel believed. The hearing room filled to capacity as Patel entered at exactly 2:15 p.m. He moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to high-stakes confrontations, his FBI badge catching the overhead lights. Behind him walked his legal team, their faces betraying none of the anxiety that gripped the Bureau's leadership. Across the room, Senator Whitehouse sat reviewing his final notes, his expression calm but focused. The Rhode Island Democrat had spent 35 years as a prosecutor before entering politics. He knew how to build a case, and he knew how to destroy one. Director Patel, Whitehouse began without preamble once the session opened. You've come here today to defend the actions of Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove and Interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin regarding their handling of the Inflation Reduction Act climate funds. Is that correct? His voice carried the measured cadence of a veteran prosecutor approaching a key witness. Patel leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped on the witness table. Senator, I'm here to provide facts about a legitimate criminal investigation into potential misuse of taxpayer funds. The American people deserve transparency. Transparency, Whitehouse repeated, allowing the word to hang in the air. Let's examine that claim. He lifted the first document from his stack. Red flag number 1. Director Patel, your DOJ launched a criminal investigation without predication. Career prosecutors warned Acting Deputy AG Bove that there was no credible evidence of criminal activity. What was your response when they raised these concerns? The question landed like a precise surgical strike. Patel's media training kicked in immediately. Senator, the DOJ follows strict protocols in all investigations. Any suggestion that we operate without proper predication is simply false. But Whitehouse was already moving to his next exhibit. This is an internal email from the Career Criminal Division Chief to Ed Martin, dated 3 weeks ago. He held up the document for the cameras to capture. Quote, launching a criminal investigation without evidence of a crime violates prosecutorial ethics and Department of Justice policy, end quote. Are you claiming this experienced prosecutor was wrong? Director Patel. The room went silent, except for the rapid clicking of camera shutters. Patel's knuckles whitened as he gripped his prepared talking points. Investigations evolve, Senator. Initial assessments don't always capture the full scope of potential violation. Red flag number 2, Whitehouse continued relentlessly. When this career prosecutor raised ethical concerns, what happened to her? He paused for dramatic effect. She was forced to resign, a veteran prosecutor, with an unblemished record, was pushed out for doing her job. Do you consider that standard procedure, Director? Sweat began to form on Patel's forehead. Despite the room's controlled temperature, personnel decisions are made for various reasons. I won't speculate on individual cases. The senator's eyes narrowed. You won't speculate. This isn't speculation, Director. This is documented fact. Red flag number 3. Whitehouse's voice grew harder. After forcing out the career prosecutor who raised ethical concerns, Acting U.S. Attorney Martin couldn't find a single career attorney in his office willing to sign the investigation documents. Not one, Director Patel. In a major federal prosecution office, no one would put their name on this case. What does that tell you? Patel tried to regain his footing. Career attorneys sometimes have different perspectives on case development. Leadership makes the final decisions, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Reporters in the press gallery exchanged knowing glances as they sensed the FBI director losing control of the narrative. The senator pulled out another document, this one bearing official court seals. Red flag number 4, when Martin presented his petition to a federal magistrate judge. What happened? He looked directly at Patel, waiting for an answer. When none came immediately, Whitehouse provided it himself. The judge denied the petition completely. A federal judge looked at your evidence and said no. Are you familiar with how rare that is for DOJ requests? Director, Patel's face had drained of color. He fumbled for his water glass before responding. Judicial decisions are part of the legal process. We respect the courts. Red flag number 5. Whitehouse's pace quickened, sensing weakness. After this judicial rejection, someone in your system started shopping this case to other U.S. attorney offices. Case shopping, Director Patel, looking for a friendlier venue after being shot down. Is that how the FBI conducts legitimate investigations? The FBI director's media strategy was crumbling. His prepared answers seemed inadequate against Whitehouse's methodical assault. Inter-district coordination is sometimes necessary in complex cases, but even Patel knew how weak that sounded. Red flag number 6. The senator's voice rose slightly. Your Florida office ordered Washington-based FBI agents to start questioning EPA employees about the grant program. Federal prosecutors questioning civil servants about lawfully appropriated congressional funds. Does that sound like standard procedure to you, Director? Patel tried to interrupt, but Whitehouse was building momentum. These are career civil servants, Director. People who followed the law, managed properly appropriated funding, and suddenly found themselves under federal investigation for doing their jobs correctly. Twitter exploded as clips from the hearing spread across social media. Patel destroyed began trending within minutes. Fox News interrupted regular programming to cover the confrontation. CNN's Chiron read, FBI Director under fire for DOJ weaponization. In the hearing room, the atmosphere had shifted completely. What began as Patel's opportunity to defend his colleagues had become a public evisceration of FBI leadership. Red flag number 7. Whitehouse delivered his final blow with surgical precision. Throughout this entire fiasco, both Martin and EPA Administrator Zeldin unleashed a barrage of public comments, flooding the information zone with accusations of fraud. The same accusations that career staff rejected, that the magistrate judge found baseless, that a second federal judge said you had no evidence to support defamatory statements. Director Patel, against career civil servants. In violation of multiple DOJ policies, the senator leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. 7 red flags of actual weaponization, not the phony claims you hear from politicians trying to excuse criminality, but real documented abuse of prosecutorial power. Patel sat in stunned silence as the implications washed over him. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, devastating. His defense of Bove and Martin had become his own professional obituary. The cameras captured every moment of his realization that this hearing would end his career. Gasps rippled through the chamber as spectators processed what they had witnessed. Even the cameras seemed to pause, as if the gravity of the moment demanded reverence. Director Patel, Whitehouse's voice, carried a tone of finality. You came here to defend what you called a legitimate investigation. Instead, you've defended the weaponization of justice itself. You've defended the persecution of career prosecutors who tried to uphold the law. You've defended the harassment of civil servants who managed congressional appropriations correctly. You've defended defamatory attacks on public servants who deserved protection, not persecution. The FBI director's hands trembled as he reached for his briefing folder. For the first time in his career, he had no response. The immediate aftermath was swift and merciless. Within hours, legal experts across cable news dissected every moment of Patel's appearance. Former prosecutors lined up to condemn what they called the most devastating exposure of DOJ corruption in decades. The White House distanced itself from the climate fund investigation. Congressional Republicans who had planned to support Patel began privately discussing his removal. The FBI Agents Association released a statement expressing serious concerns about leadership decisions that undermine bureau integrity. CNN's Anderson Cooper led a special report titled "Democracy Under Fire: How the FBI Lost Its Way." The network brought in former FBI Director James Comey, who delivered a scathing assessment. What we witnessed today wasn't law enforcement. It was political theater dressed up in bureau credentials. Director Patel's defense of the indefensible has shattered public trust in an institution that took decades to build. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow spent an entire hour walking through each red flag, calling it a masterclass in how institutional corruption operates in plain sight. Even Fox News, typically sympathetic to Republican law enforcement officials, struggled to defend Patel's performance. Tucker Carlson notably avoided the topic entirely during his primetime show, while other Fox personalities offered only lukewarm support. Director Patel may have had good intentions, offered one host, but his execution raised serious questions about oversight and accountability. The overnight polling was catastrophic for Patel's future. A CNN SSRS poll conducted 12 hours after the hearing showed that 73% of Americans, including 45% of Republicans, believed Patel should resign immediately. Perhaps more damaging, 68% said they had lost confidence in the FBI's ability to conduct impartial investigations. The agency that had recovered somewhat from the controversies of the Trump and early Biden years found itself facing its worst credibility crisis since Watergate. Social media amplified every devastating moment. TikTok users created compilations of Patel's facial expressions during Whitehouse's presentation. Set to dramatic music, the hashtag 7RedFlags gained over 2 million mentions in 24 hours. A Twitter thread by former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance, breaking down each violation in layman's terms, was retweeted 847,000 times. "This is how democracy dies," wrote one viral post. Not with jackboots and tanks, but with men in suits perverting justice behind closed doors. As Patel's motorcade left Capitol Hill, his phone buzzed with resignation calls from Republican senators who could no longer defend his position. Senator Lindsey Graham, usually a fierce defender of law enforcement, released a statement saying, "While I respect Director Patel's service, today's testimony raised questions that demand immediate investigation." Senator Marco Rubio went further. "The American people deserve an FBI director who can convincingly defend the Bureau's actions." Today's performance fell far short of that standard. Inside the Justice Department, the reverberations were immediate and profound. Career prosecutors who had remained silent about the Bon Martin operation began reaching out to congressional oversight committees, offering to testify about the pressure campaign they had witnessed. The Federal Bureau of Investigation Agents Association called an emergency meeting to discuss a potential vote of no confidence in Patel's leadership. Regional FBI offices reported that agents were questioning orders from headquarters, wondering which investigations were legitimate and which were politically motivated. The man who had walked into that hearing room, believing he would vindicate the Bureau's actions, left knowing he had instead exposed its worst instincts. The 7 red flags that Senator Whitehouse methodically presented weren't just evidence of institutional failure, they were the documentation of a justice system twisted to serve political ends rather than legal principles. More devastating still, Patel's attempted defense had confirmed every suspicion that the FBI under his leadership had become a tool of political retribution rather than a guardian of justice. In the days that followed, career prosecutors who had remained silent began speaking to reporters about the pressure campaign within DOJ. EPA employees testified before congressional committees about FBI intimidation tactics. Federal judges issued unprecedented statements about the importance of predication. Criminal investigations. The climate fund investigation that Patel had defended as protecting taxpayer money was revealed as exactly what Whitehouse claimed: weaponization disguised as law enforcement. The final irony came 2 weeks later, when the appropriated climate funds were released and began flowing to the intended recipients. Projects that would create jobs, reduce emissions, and strengthen community resilience. The investigation that destroyed Patel's career had accomplished nothing except proving Senator Whitehouse's central thesis: when justice becomes a political weapon, democracy itself suffers the wounds. Kash Patel's 47-second defense of Emil, Bove and Ed Martin lasted long enough to end his tenure as FBI director and serve as a case study in how institutional corruption, when exposed to sunlight, withers and dies. The 7 red flags that Whitehouse presented became required reading in law schools, a cautionary tale about what happens when prosecutorial power serves politics rather than justice. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a badge or a subpoena, it's truth, documented and revealed at exactly the right moment.